and thank you for tuning in to Starting Small. Today, I'm joined by Renata Black of EBY. Renata, thank you so much for joining me today.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so to kick things off, I'd like to start out with your upbringing. Where did you grow up, and what would you say your childhood was like?
So I grew up in Miami, Florida. Both of my parents died when I was very young. I was adopted, and I was able to live with my aunt and my uncle in Miami. My aunt was blonde with blue eyes, and I was not. I was brown skinned, and it was a little bit different. When I was about 15 years old, I really wanted to go back to where I was from, which was Colombia, and so I basically dropped out of school and moved back to Colombia. And I remember when I was 15 buying my own toothpaste, and so
Mm,
I think that a lot of that initial curiosity of trying to find who I was at a very young age, dropping out of school, led to an immense amount of grit and a lot of grind, and not only figuring myself out, but also learning how to survive at a very young age on my own.
mm. Yeah, I mean, leaving that young, what was that like growing up? Over in Colombia, who did you go stay with? I'm curious at that age.
I actually stayed with my grandmother for just a few months, and then I ended up becoming an English teacher, and I was a translator for a oil rig in Texaco off the coast of Colombia. And so I lived on an oil rig for 2 years, and I was a translator um, between English and Spanish. So that I started to work at a very very young age, and I think that when you have to survive on your own at that young and fend for yourself. They always say that need is the mother of invention, and you just really just start to figure things out
Mm,
very,
yeah,
very young because it's just it's basically you eat what you kill, right?
yeah.
And I think that that kind of determination, persistence, and tenacity ingrained in you in such a young age makes things like having a startup and a
Mm,
fast growing D2C company. Now I wouldn't say easier,
yeah.
but because it's ingrained in who I am, it's part of the fabric of
Mm,
of my being.
yeah. At that time, like, who would you say were some of your role models, or who did you look up to, aspire to be? I'm not sure if career path you wanted to follow any of that, but what did that?
Oh, I had none of that. I didn't
Yeah.
really any idea at that point in my life. I just wanted to travel the world and just write about
Mm,
what I would see. But one of the most inspiring people in my life at that point was a writer called Deepak Chopra. I don't know if you're familiar with him. He's an
yeah.
Indian writer.
Yeah.
So I remember getting a book my mom had given me. It was called The Seven Spiritual Laws of Success.
Mm,
And I remember traveling with this book. And later on in life, I ended up meeting Deepak, and he then wrote a chapter about me in one of his books. It was a full circle.
mm,
But those really diving into your soul and what keeps you going and giving the right meaning to things, because life is all about the meaning that you give it, because you can
yeah.
decide what anything means. When you
Yeah.
start associating more positive meanings to hardship, that's really what pulls you through. And I
Mm,
think that's what defines you as a person moving forward.
love it. So you eventually went on to back to the States for school. I saw University of North Carolina. What brought
Mhm.
you back to the States, and what time period was that prior to going to college, or what was that timing?
Yeah. So wait, you said are you where are you located right now?
So I'm in South Bend near Notre Dame.
Notre Dame. Okay, got it. So
Yeah.
yeah, so basically after I lived in Colombia, I was like, okay, I need to go back to school. So I ended up coming back, getting my GED, my good enough degree,
Mhm.
and and then I just worked really really hard. Went to community college, got an incredible grade point average, and then I applied to a few of the top journalism colleges, and one of them was University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill,
Mm,
and and they ended up accepting me, and they really only accepted about 10% of out of state students. So it was
wow.
a really big deal that I was able to get in, and that really set my academic trajectory and
Yeah.
was able to build the acumen that I have today, because obviously I everything else was just learned by
Mm,
experience and world and culture, which I feel is so important. And I think that's one of
Yeah.
the things that we really don't expose, I think, our kids enough to that and protect them from that. And ultimately that's what builds the character that's going to carry you through life, are those
Yeah,
experiences.
for sure. So studying journalism then, what were some of those aspirations post graduation? What did you want to do? Did you want to stay in North Carolina? What was your mind at in school? I'm curious.
So I ended up, one of the alumni was came down, and he was the head of advertising and sales for MTV, and he was grooming me for a position in New York at MTV. And at the time, which was a very long time ago, with 2000, 2004,
Mhm.
MTV used to be very, very cool.
Yeah.
And I was so excited about getting this position, and I was interviewing for over a year, and I didn't get it. And so
Mhm.
that was like the biggest heartbreak. My life was over. I was 24 years old. I thought that was it. And I was living with a ska band at the time, and I remember one of my roommates saying, "Hey, there's this ticket around the world, for like $6,000. If you buy this ticket, you could just travel the whole world." And I decided to do that. And I was like, "Okay, well, I didn't get this job. I might as well just we'll go travel." And what I did was I bought this ticket. They still exist as long as you go in the same direction and you to go back. You can get these tickets around the world.
Mhm.
And I wanted to volunteer in different countries. And so I had worked for 6 months, saved my money, went on this trip. And what ended up happening was that it was the same time as the tsunami.
Mm.
And while I was volunteering in India, a woman came up to me and in her native language, I had a translator at the time. She's like, "Look, I don't want your money. Can you just teach me how to make it?"
Wow.
And it's like, wow, I mean, I'm obviously super broke. I have student debt up to my ears. I had
Yeah.
no idea, but I saw all these very powerful Indian women becoming very dependent on aid. And I
Mm.
was like, wow, this isn't the solution. So that's where I was like, there has to be another way to help these people actually like make money, get out of poverty. And I then
Yeah.
found microfinance, and that's where I started my path on microfinance.
Wow. So at this time, like where were you residing? Were you living over there at the time?
I was, yeah. I lived in India for 2 years.
Okay.
I lived on because they had had a tsunami. Nobody wanted to live on the houses that were on the beach because they were so
Mm.
scared. So I lived on some beach house,
Yeah.
and I lived there for 2 years because what I ended up doing was finding the guy who started microfinance. And if you don't know what microfinance is, it's small loans to help women start their own businesses.
Mhm.
And this gentleman called Muhammad Yunus had invented this. And so I studied microfinance under him. I came back, I found this woman, and I said, "Hey, I know how to do this."
Mm.
Basically, microfinance is like getting 15 women,
Yeah.
teaching each one of them a skill. Like, you sell saris, you sell rice and bulk, you sell spices, you give each one of them a loan. It's between $50 to $150.
Mm.
And everybody builds their own business. And in 4 months, they have to pay the loan back.
Mm.
And then you then either give them bigger loans or then you give loans to other women.
Mm.
And microfinance has proven to be the strongest poverty alleviation tool today.
Wow.
And so I did that living in India for 2 years, and I just loved
Mm.
seeing how this silver turns into gold, and these women who were starting to become very dependent on aid became business owners. Then their children started to go to school, and it was
Wow.
incredible.
Wow. What an incredible experience. And I know that shapes a lot of EBY today, but in this time period, I mean, the MTV experience 2004, this experience in India, I'm taking around that time as well. And EBY is not till 2017. So where does your journey take you from there? Deeper into microfinance? What does that look like?
Yeah, so I when I was living in India, women would always say to me, "Oh, it must be horrible living in the States. You have to show your cleavage and your legs to get a man." And I was like, "No,
Mm.
it's not like that." And I always felt sorry for them because they always had to wear these saris, and a lot of them wouldn't show their hair.
Mhm.
And I'm like, "I feel sorry for you. You have to wear these crazy garbs all day. It's 104 degrees." And it was fascinating, this juxtaposition of how they viewed the women on the West and how we looked at the women on the East. And
Yeah.
then when I moved back to the States after living in India for 2 years, I was watching the Victoria's Secret show, and I thought, wow, maybe these women are right. Maybe we do use our seduction to objectify women. And what if we could use seduction to empower women?
Mm.
So that's really where I got on this whole, how can we use intimate apparel and redirect the power of seduction to empower women? And as I mentioned to you, I had met Deepak Chopra at the time. He was friends with the former CEO of Victoria's Secret, Grace Nichols, and
Mm,
he's like, "You should really talk to Grace about your idea." And Grace Nichols, who was at Victoria's Secret at the time, was
mhm,
basically said to me, "Look, if you want to do this, I'll help you."
mm,
And she's the one that she's like, "Look, there's this one product. If you do it, you're going to be very successful. It solves issues that women have with intimate apparel. It's all technology based." She basically gave me the contact to be able to do that. So
wow.
it's very much about like the circumstances of my life that led up to that point. But I was
Mm,
very open to those things happening, and then that's how I got into this.
wow. So at what time frame was that? Were you just prototyping on what that might look like? And I mean, what did that look like? Launch wasn't until 2017, is that correct?
Yeah, so originally what we did, Grace had gotten me into the factory. The product is incredible. Women love it. We started to put it in a few doors. And ironically, Sofia Vergara had gotten a hold of the product and she fell in love with the product. She fell in love with the mission because, as you know, we give a percentage of our sales to help women start their own businesses to come out of poverty.
Yep.
And she had gotten the product from a friend, and then she also had seen it in the store, and we had gotten connected. And she was like, "Listen, I love this product. I love the mission. I'm happy to work with you and like help you get this off the ground." And so she ended up, she's like, "Look, I can't do this forever, but I'll help you start this."
Mm,
And so for the first 2 years, Sophia and I basically launched EBY. We did our first beta in 2017, but the official launch was in 2018.
mm,
And here we are now, and I would say that it's been a very, 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 like every entrepreneur
yeah.
trying road. But if focusing a ton on the product, on the customer, unit economics,
Mm,
and not just putting a bunch of money into it, raising money. We actually focused a lot on profitability. Now we're at a position where the company is 3xing year over year,
wow.
and dolphins in and out of profitability and break even.
Wow. Incredible. So in those first early stages, when you first really went live in 2018, capital wise, I know you do have some backers like notoriety backers too, like Venus Williams, incredible. How did you do that first raise? Was that right at launch?
Yeah, so I've raised $15 million to date so far on my own. And as you know, 2% of women only get VC funding, and I
Yep.
was able to get VC funding. I would consider myself a professional fundraiser. It's probably the most heart wrenching, excruciating, horrible thing that anybody ever has to do because you're basically getting a no for breakfast, a no for lunch, and a no for dinner.
Mm,
And you're basically putting your whole life's work on the table, and every single person telling you why it's not going to work. And you
mm,
have to wake up the next day with the same amount of enthusiasm and pitch it as if you think, how does Axl Rose sing Paradise City every single time with the
yeah.
same amount of love for that song? And so you have to do that over and over until you
Mm,
raise money, or else you're going to die.
mm,
And so that's always a difficult thing to do.
yeah.
But I got very, very good at it. And
Love it.
I was able to, I think at the end of the day, people, they bet on the jockey more than they do the horse. And
Mm,
if you have a really strong vision and you'll do anything to get the job done, then you have this unwavering commitment.
mm,
You're able to get very influential people to believe in you. And I was very lucky and fortunate. I wouldn't say lucky because I think I must have pitched, I don't know, potentially over 300 people in my life so far. And I
wow.
have about, I don't know, 35, 40 people on my cap table. But of
Yeah.
those people, I have the former CFO of Yahoo, the
Mm,
former chairman of Ulta Beauty, who was the founder of Borders Books, the
wow.
former CEO of the New York Stock Exchange, Sophia
Wow.
Vergara, Venus Williams, Rosario Dawson. Like I have some really incredible people, but
Yeah.
that was all just nonstop persistence, grit, grind,
Yeah.
crying, just getting
For
at it the
sure.
next day.
Love it. So you guys, I mean, your D2C site looks great. I know majority of your sales are D2C, but do you guys have any retail opportunities or like what the Victoria's Secret, did that roll into any opportunities at launch as well? I'm curious.
No, for us, it's always been D2C. I
Yeah.
think when you do open wholesale, you want to be mindful that you need people that will go into the store and buy your product. It's not about just getting people
Yeah.
like it's not about just getting the product on the shelf. It's really about getting people there to buy the product. And so
Yep.
you want to ensure that you have a strong enough following to have a strong sell through. It's
Mm,
not so much about the sell in. So for us, the whole wholesale strategy is going to be more right now, we're focusing mostly on having the most innovative product in the market.
mm,
Most important thing is about having a new category, which is performance intimate apparel, where
mm,
everything we do is solution based and
mm.
solving issues that women have with intimate apparel. Once you're able to carve that and you have that uniqueness, and women need your product, which is what we're proving, hence why we have the growth that we have, the loyalty, the repeat purchase that we have.
Mhm.
Now we're coming out with a patent at the end of the year that replaces completely the need for underwire while still giving women the support they need.
Wow.
Once you have that level of innovation, then you'll have retailers make space for you. Then you will have had the following get into
Yeah.
to follow you into wholesale. But we really think it through before we do things like that.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with an incredible story, what would you say marketing wise, what works well for you guys telling that story, especially with your own story launching EBY and getting into microfinance too?
Yeah. So a couple things. Problem solution.
Mm,
So we are as I mentioned, a solution based intimate apparel company.
mhm,
Everything we do is about solving problems. So what you want to do in marketing is like, okay, what is the problem that she's having?
mm.
Make sure that she understands that you know the problem that she has and that you're very clear on how to solve it and that you actually can back it up with the goods to solve it
Mm.
and back it. Like, hey, we have a fit guarantee. Like, this is the best product on the market. We know that. And if you
Yeah.
don't love it, it's on us. So I think that level of conviction, and you better have the product to be able to back it up, because if not, then obviously it's gonna fail like the Titanic.
Yeah.
So I would say problem solution as far as marketing is concerned. And then number two is because we're a business that fuels business, and because the product is all about not only are we empowering the women who benefit from the sales, but also the women who sell our product benefit from it too, because our number one channel is influencers
Mm,
and content creators. So we have this beautiful trifecta of
mm.
the more women who sell our product are benefiting it
Yeah.
from sales. Because I can't tell you that, we write, I would say at this point, yeah, we're writing six-figure checks to influencers
Wow.
um, a month. So, but we're also, every time we're selling these products, we're also able to help women out
Yeah.
of poverty and into business. So it's this beautiful trifecta that works incredibly well. But I would say that it doesn't matter how great your marketing is, the product has to be absolutely exceptional. And you have to be able to fulfill on the promise that you're
Mhm.
delivering. And that promise needs to be solving for a problem.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, with some of that feedback from the marketing, what would you say is the main demographic overall? Of course, women, but do you see a trend there? I'm curious.
For us, we're very clear on our audience. She's a young mom. She's
Mm,
very similar to myself. She's a high performer, meaning that she works out or she goes to yoga or she's going to work. She has a family. She has friends. She's trying to be social, but she also has a lot of strains in her life. She's trying to get a lot done in a short period of time. She has a lot of opportunities. There's financial insecurity. So she's also trying to climb up the social ladder. She's on social a lot. So then you have a lot of that comparison that kind of like eats away at you as a woman. So through all of that, our customer is, she's this going through her own evolution. And while she's doing that, we want to ensure that we can give her relief to feel great.
mm, love it. So on the philanthropy side of EBY, what role does that play? I mean, giving back to women, especially digging back into that microfinance. If a consumer were to purchase on EBY, what does that look like?
Sure.
Mhm.
So, my big thing with cause, which is why we started the company, is the only way you can have real impact is through business. Why? Because business is a recurring revenue stream. Hard stop, period. You can't have real impact if it's based on generosity or
Mm,
donations, because that's just not consistent. So you
yeah,
can't build a school today and hope you're going to get enough donations, because it's just not going to work.
yeah,
So for me, it was having a consistent revenue stream to have an impact. Now, the only way you can have a consistent revenue stream is margin, right? If you have no margin, you have no mission.
mm,
So making sure that we had a very strong foundation of a business that could give consistently was
Mm,
number one. Were
yeah.
we able to do it every year? No, we weren't. But now, because we've been so focused on our unit economics,
Mm,
really focused on returns, refunds, cost of goods, warehouse, fulfillment, all those things that just eat at your margin, making sure we have a really lean team,
yeah.
that we have a strong return on investment that leads to profitability, then you can fulfill on that mission. But now you can do it consistently because now you have a revenue driving business that is sustainable.
Mm,
So that's been the whole philosophy behind it. And I wouldn't say that the cause is selling the product. No, it doesn't. People buy the product because it's solving a problem for them.
yeah,
The cause really makes them feel good once they've bought the product
for
and they're
sure.
like, wow, this is great. Like, this company is helping female entrepreneurs, and I bought this from a female entrepreneur, or I am one myself.
Mm. What does the today? I mean, I'm sure it differed from back in the day, but what does that supply chain look like? Are you guys using a 3PL? Also for manufacturer, what does that look like? I'm curious.
Yeah, yeah. There's only two factories in the world that make our product because it's a tech product, and
Yeah.
we manufacture out of both of them. I have very, very strong relationships with my factories. I fly out every year and I visit both of them.
Mm,
Then we do have a 3PL here in the United States as well. And
yeah.
so that, there's always those that can be very expensive. So you have conversations as to, okay, so maybe we move the 3PL more towards,
Mm,
centrally located in Mexico so you can ship to both coasts more efficiently. And what does
yeah.
that look like? How much can you save? So there's a whole concept like more money, more problems. That's absolutely true. The bigger you get, something that was once a line item that was very small gets really big,
Mm,
and you start to that becomes a priority. And so
mm,
everything top of line
yeah.
is very much of what I focus on, which is costs.
Love it. So just slowly wrapping up here, if a consumer or a listener were to go to EBY and purchase, what would you say is the main reason people do purchase EBY or switch to EBY, ladies
Mm.
overall in general?
I think that, and we have such a strong base. I mean, just to tell you, we survey our customers all the time because we always want to know what she's feeling, what she's going through, how can we solve for her. And every time we send a survey out, we get 600 to 700 responses because we
Wow.
have a very engaged community.
Mm,
So that I am so grateful and honored and humbled because I think she likes to know that we actually really do care because we do. All our products are very consumer centric.
mhm,
That's number one. So I think she comes to us because I think she genuinely thinks and knows that we do care and that we're creating products to solve for her.
mhm,
But what we hear constantly is, women have been conditioned to think that they need an underwire to get support.
mm,
And that's just the way societal norms have been. We grew up thinking that.
mm,
We offer women support without an underwire. And so
yeah.
think about how uncomfortable it is to have metal wires strapped onto your chest all day.
Mm,
And that you grew up thinking that's the only way you can get support. And that's true for most women.
yeah.
So I think that that solution of being like, wow, I can get the support that I need and not have to have pain is such a sense of relief
Yeah.
that that's what causes this really strong emotional connection between our customers and the brand.
Mm,
And I think that, that's why they trust all the other products that we come and we're constantly innovating with new technology.
mhm. Well, Renata, I like to conclude each episode with this. Such an incredible story, but if you can share one piece of advice with an aspiring entrepreneur, maybe something you've learned or regret along the way, what would you say that would be?
Mhm. I would say that normally people would start being an entrepreneur because they have an incredible idea or they're just very passionate about something.
Mm,
And despite that, and they want to be their own boss. But when you are an entrepreneur, you have no free time.
mm,
You work every single day. You're always thinking about the business. You're never truly off. And that's a big life commitment.
yeah.
So not to scare people, but not everyone is meant to be an entrepreneur. And
Yeah.
that's okay because there's so many cool companies out there that you can be a natural extension of what they're doing. And that might be a very similar idea to what you have. and
Mm,
that you can be an invaluable asset into doing that. So
love
I
it.
think that that's been my biggest learning. And knowledge is bliss, and I think it's great that people don't know how hard it is, but it is a life commitment. It is
Yeah,
forever a life commitment. Like,
for
I
sure.
have two kids. I don't think I see them as much as I should.
Mm,
And it's a conscious decision because the business takes the majority of my time.
yeah,
So, you just have to be very mindful of, if you're going to do something, it's probably the best use of your life, but it comes at the highest cost.
mm, for sure. Well, Renata, thank you so much for joining me today. And to the listeners out there, make sure to check out Ebby at join/ebby.com.